The old house stood on a hill overlooking the village. John, Emily, and their daughter Lily had come seeking peace. They found only silence. The village was small, the people distant. Their smiles felt forced, their eyes full of shadows. John dismissed it as small-town suspicion. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. This place held secrets. She could feel it in her bones. Their new home was imposing. Dark wood, high ceilings, and long, echoing hallways. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of dust and decay. Lily, ever the adventurer, was thrilled. She raced through the rooms, her laughter echoing in the emptiness. John began unpacking, his optimism unwavering. Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Something was wrong here, she just knew it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The silence of the village pressed in on them, a silence so profound it seemed to have a weight of its own. People spoke in hushed tones, their words carried away by the wind, as if afraid the very air might betray their secrets. Emily tried to befriend the locals, her heart open and her intentions pure. She was met with polite smiles and averted gazes. Their unease was palpable, a tangible barrier she couldn't break through. One old woman, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, finally spoke, her voice a fragile whisper. "Leave this place!" she rasped, her voice trembling. "It's not safe. The wind carries more than just whispers." Before Emily could press further, the woman scurried away, clutching a crucifix to her chest as if it were her only protection. John dismissed the woman's warning as mere superstition, a relic of an old world, but Emily wasn't so sure. She felt a chill in the air, a sense of foreboding that she couldn't shake. The house felt different at night, floorboards creaked underfoot, and shadows seemed to dance in the corners of her vision. Whispers seemed to emanate from the walls, a soft, insistent murmur that grew louder with each passing night. Lily too grew quiet, her usual chatter replaced by an unsettling silence. She started talking to herself, her tiny voice filled with an unnerving maturity, as if she were conversing with someone unseen. Emily would find her staring into space, her eyes wide and distant, as if she were looking into another world. Something was changing their little girl. The once vibrant and lively child was now a shadow of her former self, her laughter replaced by an eerie stillness. Emily and John spent countless nights discussing what could be happening. John remained skeptical, but Emily's intuition told her that something was deeply wrong. Determined to find answers, Emily delved into the village's history. She spent hours in the dusty old library, poring over ancient texts and forgotten records. She discovered tales of a curse, whispered through generations, a dark secret that the villagers were too afraid to speak of openly. Armed with this knowledge, Emily knew she had to protect her family. The whispers on the wind were more than just sounds, they were a warning, a call to action. Together, Emily and John prepared to face whatever was haunting their lives, determined to break the silence and uncover the truth. The storm was coming, and with it, the answers they sought. The whispers on the wind would soon reveal their secrets. One afternoon while exploring the dusty attic, Lily stumbled upon a hidden compartment. Inside, nestled amongst cobwebs and forgotten trinkets, lay a wooden doll. It was small and grotesque, with a leering grin and piercing black eyes. It was dressed in a red silk robe, its tiny hands clasped in prayer. Lily was immediately drawn to it. She brought it downstairs, her eyes shining with delight. John found it unsettling, but Emily felt a wave of dread wash over her. The doll radiated a palpable aura of malice. She tried to convince Lily to discard it, but the girl refused. She clung to the doll fiercely, her attachment bordering on obsession. She named it I and insisted on taking it everywhere with her. Lily's behavior grew increasingly erratic. It all started subtly, with small changes that were easy to dismiss. She would spend hours alone in the garden, talking to herself or to her new doll, I. At first, Emily and John thought it was just a phase, a child's way of coping with loneliness. But soon it became clear that something was very wrong. She spoke to I constantly, her voice taking on a strange sing-song quality. It was as if she was under a spell, entranced by the doll's presence. She would sit for hours whispering secrets to I, her eyes wide and unblinking. The doll seemed to be her only friend, her confidant in a world that no longer made sense to her. She refused to eat, claiming I was feeding her invisible treats. No matter how much Emily tried to coax her, Lily would push the food away, insisting that she wasn't hungry. It was as if the doll had some kind of hold over her, controlling her every action. Emily and John were at their wits' end, unable to understand what was happening to their daughter. At night, Emily and John would hear her whispering in the darkness, her voice filled with a chilling maturity. It was as if she was having conversations with someone much older, someone who understood things that a child her age shouldn't. The whispers would go on for hours, long after they had gone to bed, filling the house with an eerie sense of unease. The laughter that once filled the house was gone, replaced by an unnerving silence. The joy and light that Lily had brought into their lives seemed to have been snuffed out, replaced by a darkness that was impossible to ignore. The house felt empty, devoid of the warmth and love that had once been its foundation. Emily found herself constantly drawn to Lily's room. She would stand outside the door listening to the whispers, her heart heavy with fear and confusion. She wanted to help her daughter, to bring her back from whatever dark place she had gone to, but she didn't know how. The doll seemed to be the key, but Emily was too afraid to confront it directly. She would stand in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep, the doll clutched tightly in her arms. Lily looked so peaceful, so innocent, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The doll's presence was like a dark cloud hanging over them, casting a shadow on their lives that they couldn't escape. The doll's eyes seemed to follow her, their black depths filled with unknowing malice. It was as if the doll was alive, watching her every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. Emily tried to tell herself that it was just her imagination, that a simple toy couldn't possibly be the source of their troubles, but the feeling of dread was impossible to ignore. One night, she could have sworn she saw the doll's lips curl into a cruel smile. It was just a fleeting moment, a trick of the light, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. She knew then that she had to do something, that she couldn't let this malevolent presence continue to control their lives. She confided her fears to John, but he dismissed them as her imagination running wild. He couldn't see what she saw, couldn't feel the darkness that seemed to be closing in around them. He was convinced that it was all in her head, that she was overreacting to a simple child's toy. He refused to believe that a harmless wooden doll could be the source of their troubles. To him, it was just a toy, an inanimate object that couldn't possibly have any power over their lives. But Emily knew better. She could feel the malevolence emanating from the doll, could see the way it had changed their daughter, and she knew that she had to find a way to break its hold before it was too late. As the days grew shorter, so too did Lily's patience. The once vibrant and cheerful child began to change in ways that were both alarming and heartbreaking. Her laughter, which used to fill the house with joy, was now replaced by an unsettling silence, punctuated only by her sudden outbursts. Her sweet nature was replaced by fits of rage. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over her, casting a shadow on her once sunny disposition. Her parents, Emily and John, were at a loss, unable to understand the source of her anger. They tried everything they could think of, comforting her, disciplining her, even seeking advice from friends and family, but nothing seemed to help. She would lash out at her parents, her tiny hands transformed into claws. The tantrums grew more violent and her screams more piercing. It was as if an unseen force was driving her to act out in ways that were completely out of character. Emily and John were at their wits' end, their hearts breaking as they watched their beloved daughter transform before their eyes. The house seemed to react to her anger. It was an old house with a history that was as mysterious as it was unsettling. Strange things began to happen. Doors would creak open on their own, and cold drafts would sweep through the rooms, even on the warmest days. It was as if the house itself was alive, feeding off Lily's negative energy. Lights flickered, objects moved on their own, and disembodied whispers echoed through the halls. The once cozy home had become a place of fear and uncertainty. Emily and John could no longer ignore the signs that something supernatural was at play. They felt as if they were living in a nightmare, one from which they could not wake. One evening, Emily witnessed a vase fly across the room, shattering against the wall just inches from John's head. The incident left them both shaken to the core. It was the final straw, the undeniable proof that their home was under siege by forces beyond their understanding. They knew they had to take action, but where to start? He could no longer deny that something was terribly wrong. John, who had always been the skeptic, was now convinced that they were dealing with something otherworldly. His logical mind struggled to make sense of the events, but the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. He felt a deep sense of dread, knowing that their lives would never be the same. Emily, desperate for answers, began researching local folklore. She spent countless hours poring over old books and online forums, searching for any clue that might explain the strange occurrences. Her determination was fueled by a mother's love and a fierce desire to protect her family. She knew that the key to their salvation lay in understanding the dark forces at work. She stumbled upon tales of the Kuman Thong, a spirit doll said to be inhabited by the soul of a stillborn child. The stories were chilling, describing how these dolls were created through dark rituals and used to harness supernatural powers. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as she read about the malevolent spirits that could be trapped within these dolls. These dolls, she learned, were often used in black magic rituals to grant their owners wealth and power. But the price was steep, and the consequences dire. The spirits within the dolls were vengeful, demanding constant attention and offerings. If their needs were not met, they would unleash their fury upon their owners, causing untold suffering and chaos. But the rituals came at a terrible price. The more Emily read, the more she realized that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than she had initially thought. The Kuman Thong were not just harmless trinkets, they were vessels of dark power, capable of wreaking havoc on anyone who dared to cross them. The spirits were vengeful, demanding constant attention and offerings. Emily knew that they had to find a way to appease the spirit that had taken hold of their home. She began to gather the necessary items for the rituals, hoping that by following the ancient practices, they could bring peace to their tormented household. If their needs were not met, they would turn on their owners, unleashing their fury upon them. The stakes were high and the consequences of failure were too terrifying to contemplate. Emily and John knew that they had to act quickly for the sake of their daughter and the safety of their home. The battle against the dark forces had begun, and they were determined to emerge victorious.